It's time. All right. I think we'll wait for a couple of minutes more. Hopefully, more people will join in. Wow, really low turnout rate today. I wonder why that is. Yeah, I think we can start in 2 minutes. And maybe if we have about 5 people at least. All right, I think we'll just start because I'm not sure if more people are going to join in. So I hope all of you have gone through the lectures, and so we are halfway through the course. We are in week 6. Actually, week 7 is ongoing. So week 6 of the tutorials. So yeah, let's just start. I think there are 5 of you here. All right, so we're again going to have a bit of discussion today, so please feel free to unmute or use the chat box. So tell me, what does this image depict? And there are out here a number of stages, 1 to 7. Uh, I please, if anyone could just have a take a try and explain what these stages are. So first, you can tell me, what does this image depict actually? What is it showing us?
Ma'am, it is showing about ecological succession.
Oops. Ryanol, you can use the chat box if you want, no problem. Or you can unmute later. Yeah, correct, Monica. That is succession, ecological succession. Yes, that's right. Yeah, would anyone like to explain what's actually happening out here? You need not explain everything in detail, but just like a brief overview. Population abundance increasing over from one trophic level to another. Would somebody like to? Yeah, correct. One is barren land on which pioneer species takes control. Okay, and then tell me what is the last stage. So you've got the first stage, right? Correct. Yeah. So that's by far, yes, a climax community. Barren land gets forest grown gradually. Sure. I think that is like a good summary for the entire image. And it is basically how a barren land gets occupied by living organisms and how living organisms go on to progress and finally reach a climax community. Yeah, so I will take that. All right, let's go to the next question. So here we have a statement. I can read it out. Dash can be defined in various ways, but in essence, they are dynamic boundaries and transitional areas between two very distinct ecological habitats containing different communities and physiochemical features. So, this is a particular word. It defines a seri. No, it's a term used for a region. Yeah. Oops. That's about right. Any other guesses? As to what this region can be called. So we have one answer, or rather two answers here. Okay, you guys need to participate, please. If you don't know, just state that you don't know. Okay. So Bharat Kumar says Sari. Mm, any other guesses? Okay, so basically, a survey is a sequence of developmental stages, right, of the ecological community, but this is a particular region. So the key word here in the statement is they are a transitional area between two very distinct ecological habitats, right? And Ryanul is given the correct answer. This area is known as an ecotone. So, if I am currently inside a forest and I'm walking out of a forest, that in certain regions the forest will suddenly transition into grasslands, right? So, the border area would be an ecotone, right? And a few examples of ecotone also do exist in our ecosystem. Like, for example, where saltwater and freshwater systems meet, the region is called, you all know this term. It's a very common term. Yeah, Amul?
Diffuse ecotone.
Diffuse? Sorry, I didn't get.
Diffuse ecotone.
Diffuse ecotone. No, so I'm looking for a word actually. And yeah, Monica has given the word. It's called an estuary. So you have estuaries at the mouth of rivers where they meet the sea in most common examples. And that the area where the saltwater and freshwater system meet is called an estuary, which is actually an ecotone, right? And then you also have terrestrial and marine ecosystems that meet at a particular region. It also forms a type of habitat. Any guesses as to what this type of habitat could be? Coastal, sure, it is, yes, a coastal type of habitat. If you could be more specific, you're on the right trajectory. So it is a coastal system, and these are also like very sensitive to ecological changes and serve as very good indicators of the health of the environment. Okay, that's not a problem. Yeah. Okay, I can give you a hint. Um, the Sundarbans is famous for this system. You also do have a lot of these systems. Yeah, correct. That's a mangrove system. So that is where that is also termed as an ecotone region where terrestrial and marine ecosystems work, right? Because you have all the mangrove trees extending from the land in these areas that extend into the marine sea, right? So basically, you must know that, and these ecotones are also really unique because they harbor very unique flora and fauna, right? And sometimes the species richness and diversity increases tremendously at these ecotones. And these ecotones support like various different biodiversities. So they're very important regions in our system, right? In our community. All right, so I'm going to go to the next question. So here we have a number of scientists listed out here, and whose theory of community ecology assumes that the differences between members of an ecological community of trophically similar species are neutral or irrelevant to their success. Who stated this? Was it Gleason, Clement, Hubble, or Darwin? Any guesses? B. Okay, Clement. One for B. Okay, I know we have very few people today. We're about six people today, but that means I need about six answers. So you can take a guess, the rest of you. C, okay. One for Clement, one for Hubble. What about the rest of you? So these are very important in the theory of defining community ecology, all these scientists, because they all had different theories, right? Monica says B. Who else? So this person's theory assumes that differences between members of an ecological community of trophically similar species are neutral or irrelevant to their success. Like it does not matter the differences between members of the trophically similar species occupying the same trophic strata. All right. So, well, I think I'm going to give the answer, and the right answer is Hubble. So, what does Clemens' theory really say? Does anyone know what Clemens or Gleason's theory says? Okay. Do you know what Darwin's theory says? Is there a theory by Darwin for community ecology? I should have answers for this question at least. Don't know? Okay. Sure. All right, so Darwin really has not postulated any particular theory for community ecology, though his work is related to community ecology, feeds into community ecology on various levels. But the other two scientists, so basically, Clemens assumed that the ecological communities were. Yes, theory of evolution is by Darwin. Yes, natural selection, theory of natural selection is by Darwin. Yeah. So Clemens assumed that ecological communities were comparable to superorganisms, where interactions of different species boost a direct pattern of evolution of community. So, in his theory, he viewed all uh, these superorganisms as a fundamental element of the web of life, right? And it is Clemens that established the term series that explain ecological succession through an array of intermediate stages. But what Gleason said was exactly the opposite of what Clemens said. He said that the abundance of species fluctuates independently of one another through successional period and not through mutually beneficial association. Right? So everything is disjunct from each other. And his idea was that a group of species, uh, his idea revolved around the idea of being individualistic, where a group of species having similar physical and chemical niche requirements were together, right? So one believed that there was a gradual feed in of one level to another level, and believed in the theory established series, a term that explains succession. But the other scientists believe that all these groups are very individual and are not related to each other, right? They don't have any um, mutually beneficial associations between each other, right? So they're very independent, while the other one was very successional, related. All right, so we can go to the next question. So you have a figure out here, and that should help you answer the question. So the dash niche is always lesser than or equal to the dash niche. So could you tell me what is the first blank and the second blank? So what niche is lesser than or equal to the other niche? Any guesses? Related. Okay, so there are two niches: fundamental niche and realized niche. So which is the smaller one? Usually the smaller one.
Fundamentally is smaller than
Fundamental
realized.
niche is a smaller one. Okay. Reynolds says realized niche is a smaller one. Anybody else has any other guesses? Come on, you all need to please say something. What do the rest of you feel? We have Jyotsna, Monica, Sneha, Bharat Kumar. Fundamental niche is smaller, Monica says. What about the others?
Fundamental niche is smaller, ma'am.
Fundamental niche is smaller, okay. Uh, okay, so it seems that fundamental niche has won the race in this case of being smaller. But actually, Reinhold is correct, and it's the realized niche that is smaller. So, Reinhold, do you want to explain why is that so? Or if anyone else would also like to explain, please go ahead. So the graphs here should actually give you the clue, right? So in this graph out here, you have resource on the x-axis and you have number of individuals using the resource on the y-axis. Okay. Now let's assume the green line and the purple line out here you see are the niches occupied by two species. Let's assume there are two species of birds and they are feeding on the same resource. Okay. Analysis because environmental factors have an impact on resource. Sure, okay, yes, that is one reason why fundamental niche can be is larger than why actually realized niche is smaller than the fundamental niche. Okay, sure. Okay, so going back to the example, so you have two species, right? One is species one, and okay, let's say species green and species purple, and you have the fundamental niche that is used by the shown by the solid line with the white background. So this entire curve under the green line is a fundamental niche occupied by green species, and the entire white area, forget about this area right now, the shaded one, is the entire fundamental niche occupied by species purple, right? And if you see in the center out here, there is a region of overlap, right? So there are regions of overlap where both the species are found feeding on a particular resource, okay? But now, if you see out here, they have mentioned or they have actually shown that the realized niche of the purple species is this shaded region. So that shows that it is, so this is the possible area of resources that it can utilize, but it is only utilizing a part of it which is in this shaded region. Why do you feel that could be the reason? Any guesses?
The organism
Yeah.
present in the environment
Mhm.
utilize the may utilize the same resource.
Yeah.
There will be competition and
Yeah. And what is happening in this case of
predation
competition?
also.
Yeah, Amol, you're correct. What is happening in this case of competition?
In the competition, the two different species utilize the same resource.
Yeah. So here, which is the more successful competitor in this case between green and purple?
Mm,
Right. So Ranul has given you a clue.
green.
Yeah. So it is a green species, right? So you can probably, in fact, decipher from this that since the realized niche of the purple species is much lesser than the fundamental niche, the green species is probably competing and is more successful than the purple species in utilizing a particular resource, right? So, keeping this information in mind, what does this tell us about the realized niche of the green species? Is it larger than that of the realized niche of the purple species or smaller than that? Okay, Ranul says larger. What about the others? Does anyone disagree with Ranul? I'm not sure as to what to assume no responses, but okay, so yes, the realized niche of the green species would be larger than the realized niche of the purple species, because the green is more successful when competing for a particular resource as opposed to the purple species, right? So actually, is this graph clear? Does anyone not understand what this graph is trying to represent, or does anyone not understand what is the difference between fundamental and realized niche? Apart from Ryanul, there is nobody else. Everyone's understood. Okay, I'm going to assume everyone is understood. All right, so let's move on to the next question. Yeah, Amol.
Ma'am, is it possible that the fundamental niche and realized niche are equal?
Yes, that's what
Yes.
the statement says, right? The realized niche is usually always lesser than or equal to the fundamental niche. So that is how you would fill in the blanks for this part of the question, right?
Yes.
All right. So next question. So dash species are the first to colonize a barren habitat or an area affected by disturbances. So is it a keystone species? Is it an ecotone species? Is it a vital species? Is it a pioneer species? Okay, so three answers for D. Any other guesses?
Pioneer.
Okay, pioneer, T, D, yes. All right, so I think everyone's gotten this one right. So let's move on. Okay, so you have a climax community, and when a climax community is controlled by the soil community, what type of a climax vital species? Yeah, I just put that in as another just extra option. There is no such thing as a vital species. It's just to throw you off. Yeah. All right. So you have a climax community controlled by the soil community. It's called a catastrophic climax, an edaphic climax, a disclimax, a climatic climax. Any guesses? B, B. Any other guesses? B. All right. So yes, B is the correct answer. Does anyone want to explain any of the other kinds of climax communities? What is a catastrophic climax? Yes, correct. Natural disasters caused by natural disasters like wildfires, and then there is a rapid development or regeneration. What is a climatic climax? Supported by the climate of the region. Yes, that is correct. All right. And what about disclimax? All right. Any guesses? What is disclimax? The origin of disclimax? So disclimax is actually originating from disturbance climax, right? And these disturbances can be caused by usually anthropogenic causes like humans or yeah, domesticated animals. So due to, like, for example, grasslands can be overgrazed by farm animals, for an example, and humans are anyway causing a lot of disturbances everywhere. So yeah. All right. So moving on to the next question. So a type of succession wherein previous animals and plant communities are able to be replaced by a newer community. Is it called autogenic succession, allogenic succession, primary succession, or secondary succession? C. Okay. Any other guesses? Okay, one more for C. C, C, C. Okay. Can someone, okay, C is the right answer. Can someone tell me the difference between primary succession and secondary succession?
Primary succession occur on barren land
Correct. Yeah,
where the previous life is not exist,
sure. Yeah, absolutely right. And could anyone,
while
yeah, sure. Sorry, go ahead, Amul.
the secondary succession is occur uh, after deforestation is an example.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a good example as well. Yeah. And
Forest
yeah, Amul,
forest fire
forest
after
fire.
forest
Yeah, sure. That is another good example. Yeah. And what about autogenic and allogenic succession? What is this driven by? What is this actually? Succession. Any guesses? Succession driven by what is known as autogenic succession, and succession driven by what is known as allogenic succession. This is all in your post notes. Okay, so basically, autogenic succession is when your succession is driven by what factors? Biotic or abiotic? Guesses? Abiotic. Okay. Any other guesses? Okay, so it's actually the opposite. So you have autogenic succession driven by biotic factors and allogenic succession driven by abiotic factors, right? So yeah, okay, I'm gonna go to the next question. So you have a number of processes involved in succession, right? What is the correct order or basic order for processes involved in succession? Choose the right option. So if you know the stages, you would know this. Any guesses? D, okay. Oops. Other than D, any guesses? D. Okay. So yeah, D is actually the right answer. So that is the correct process. I'm sure all of you know what these processes mean. So we'll probably move on. Okay. So you have uh, two types of factors that define a system, right? You have resistance and resilience, right? And then so you're filling the blanks with these two words, so I can read it out to you. So disturbances constitute a major force influencing, sometimes even determining, the structure and functions of ecological components such as populations, communities, and ecosystems. So the capacity to weather a disturbance without loss is defined as what? Whereas the other term is the capacity to recover from a disturbance after incurring losses which may be considerable. Right? So, what is the capacity to weather a disturbance without loss? So, this basically means the system does not change despite a heavy load of disturbance. What would you term it as?
First one is resistance and second one is resilience.
Right. So the first one is resistance and the second one is resilience. Okay. So would you like to explain the graph? Like you need not worry about being right or wrong. I mean, you can just explain whatever is shown in the figure. So basically, your this black uh, stone, let's say it's a stone out here, is your disturbance. And these three colors are the different kind of trajectories that your system can take, right? So you have ecosystem state here on the x-axis and the energy potential on the y-axis, right? So in the case of, let's just follow the green line first. So in the case of the disturbance occurring out here, on the green line, it shows low resistance and high resilience, right? So it is unable to withstand the capacity of the disturbance, so the energy potential really drops. But then it is able to withstand it, right? It doesn't resist it, but it withstands it after it drops. So that is known as high resilience. But now, if we follow the blue line, we see that the disturbance has gone down but not so much, right? So you have high resistance because the ecosystem state, if you can see the gap between these two, it's altered very less as compared to the green one. See, the green one, the ecosystem state on the y-axis, on the x-axis has been altered a lot, right? So it is unable to resist it, but it is highly resilient. But out here, you have high resistance, right? The ecosystem state is not differing much, but you have low resilience, right? Because it anyway has high resistance. And then you have low resistance and low resilience, right? So the ecosystem state gets altered a lot, as well as the energy potential drops a lot, right? So systems can be very different, and based on whether they are able to withstand um, any disturbance. So withstanding disturbance, is known as resistance, and resilience is known as the capacity to be able to bounce back from a disturbed from a disturbance that occurs in the system. Okay, I hope that was clear. All right, so yeah, I will just move on now. So you have a calculation index known as a community dominance index, and it is basically the percentage of abundance that is contributed by the dash most abundant species. Is it 2? Is it 4? Is it 6? Is it 5? 10. One second, where is 10 as the option? We have 2, 4, 6, and 5. I should have probably written it as numbers. No problem. 5, okay. One guess for 5. What about the others? Any guesses? 5, okay. Any other responses from the others? Nobody else has any other guesses? Okay. So, well, it's not 5, it's actually 2. I don't have a figure of the formula, but it is actually the percentage abundance of the two most abundant species that helps you calculate the community dominance index. Alright, I'm just going to move on. So, okay. So, you've all studied about keystone species. So, what is usually a keystone species? Is it usually a primary producer? It has a, or is it something that has a critically important role in determining species composition of its community? Keystone species is always a predator, or a keystone species reduces the species diversity in a community. What is the correct answer?
B.
Okay, B. One answer for B. B or C. Okay. Any other guesses? I need more people to pitch in. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. B, 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 B. Okay. Any other answers apart from three people? Sneha, Jyotsna, Utkarsh. Yeah, it's only three of you. And now Rishikesh. Uh, B is most appropriate. C is also correct. Okay. Any other guesses by the others who haven't replied? Okay, you can actually even just take a guess since your exam is has MCQs. I'm sure you wouldn't want to leave any of them Right. I'm not sure if you have negative marking, but yeah. No guesses? Okay, excellent. So tell me why is it not C? Why is it B and why is it not C? So let me ask you a question. So in the previous lectures, you have had an example of a keystone species. B because it affects other species. Yes, sure. That's absolutely correct. So yes, B is the right answer. Yeah. So example the wolf. And where was this wolf? Wolves of, yes, Yellowstone National Park in the US, right? And so when they removed the wolves from there, or when the wolves were removed from there, it had a huge cascading effect on the other lower trophic levels, right? So why is C not correct? C is correct partially. Uh, yes, predators can be keystone species, but there are a lot of examples where keystone species are actually primary producers, and plants are also keystone species. I think there is an example of a cacti in a desert somewhere, which is believed to be, I'm forgetting the name, which is believed to be a keystone species because it supports life as well as provides shelter to a lot of organisms in the desert. So, like this, there are also several other primary producers that can also be known as keystone species, right? So it is not always a predator that is a keystone species in a community. So, does anyone have an idea of this figure that is shown out here and what it explains? Would anyone like to take a guess? This is a famous example of how keystone species can affect the community. So, what's actually happening here?
Ma'am, can I explain?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Ma'am, this is the example of keystone species. Otter is a keystone species here. This is the example of kelp. Means its relationship between kelp and sea otter,
Right?
where sea urchins are the grazers.
Mm-hmm.
They graze on kelp, and otter eat them and control their population and also protect the kelp.
Right.
But somehow the population of sea otter decline, so the sea urchin get increased, and also the kelp get overweight and die.
Right. So why is the kelp dying due to
Overgrazing.
sorry, overgrazing? Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
Right. Yeah. So that is well explained. So yeah, as Rishikesh mentioned, like removal of a particular organism, in this case a sea otter, has drastic effects lower down in the trophic communities because sea otters here are the top predators and they predate on sea urchins, and sea urchins actually are grazers that feed on primary producers, which out here are the kelp, which is also known as sea grass. So when you have the sea otters removed from the community, what exactly is happening is that, wow, somebody is coming into class now. Okay. Sea otters, what is happening is that there is an imbalance in the ecosystem, right? And sea urchins rapidly proliferate, and this rapid proliferation of this primary consumer, which is sea urchin here in this case, results in the rapid overgrazing of the seagrass community, and you have overgrazed kelp out here, which is shown in the figure. So, what do you think happens now after this? Let's say this stage on the left has moved to the stage on the right. What do you think happens after this? It follows a particular cycle which you have learned. Does anyone remember? This all ties back to previous lectures.
Ma'am, it leads to secondary succession.
Secondary succession. How? But everything is not getting removed, right?
Yeah.
Population explosion. Okay, so this is okay. So Ryanol mentions population explosion. So what is population explosion? Then population explosion of which organism? Sea urchins. Yes. So after the population of the sea urchins explodes, what happens? Overgrazing happens, right? And once overgrazing happens, yes, there is no food left. So then what happens? Population of what declines? Sea urchins, yes. And what happens when the population of sea urchins decline? Kelp increases, yes. So what is this actually showing you? This interaction? You're completely on the right track. Anybody else? Any guesses as to what this interaction between the kelp and the sea urchin is? So you can see there is a pattern, right? Predator decrease, prey increase. Correct. So this cycle is known as, and it feeds into a particular equation which you have studied before, which basically is to understand these kind of interactions. You are absolutely on the right note, Ranu. So, so this is actually a predator-prey cycle, right? And does anyone remember? I can reveal it to you. The Lotka-Volterra model. Yeah, yeah. So this is the Lotka-Volterra predator-prey equation cycle, right? And I don't have a figure of it here, but if you remember, you had time, and then on the x-axis, and you had abundance on the y-axis, and then you had two cyclical lines that are going in opposite phase to each other, which is one for the predator and one for the prey, right? So when the predator increases, the prey drops. And then when the prey drops, of course, there is no food left for the predator. So the predator starts dropping. And as the predator starts dropping, the prey starts increasing, right? So this is the same concept. We studied about, I think, the lynx and the hare, and then the wolves and the rabbits, or I can't exactly remember. But any predator prey cycle follows these opposite phase uh, waves, and which feeds into this Lotka-Volterra equation, right? So you must always remember that all these concepts are not disjunct, right? Everything is related to everything in some way or the other, and it ties back to previous concepts. So don't only go about study community ecology as only community ecology, behavior as only behavior, right? Because all these concepts tie together to form the big picture, right? Okay, so I hope keystone species are clear to everyone, and we can just move on now. Um, okay, so which of these environments is most likely to experience the arrival of a wow, somebody's joining now. Uh, Most likely to experience the arrival of a pioneer species, right? So you all know what are pioneer species, and which of the environment is most likely to experience the arrival of a pioneer species? Is it A, an old growth forest, B, an undisturbed prairie, C, an established mountain lake, or D, a newly formed volcanic island? Okay, so you have D. All answers for D. Okay, so yes, you are correct. And I should move on to the last question. Oops. All right. So now you all know what are characteristics, what are pioneer species, right? So what are the plant characteristics that are common to pioneer species? Are they plants with roots that act as wedges to slowly break apart rocks? Are they plants with long, thick roots that tap into deep water supplies? Or are they trees with exposed surface roots that trap soil and vegetation? Or are they plants with a broad, matte surface of roots that quickly soak up water? What, what in these four possible options, what best defines a pioneer species? Okay, one answer for A. Another answer for A. Any other guesses? Okay, I need all of you to reply to this because this is the last question. Come on. I haven't heard anything from Jyotsna and Aparna. Are you guys here? And Sneha. Okay. Well, thanks guys for participating. The few of you who are responding. All right. So yeah, it is actually A. So basically, what is the role of a pioneer species? A pioneer species is the first that invades a particular uh, area that is usually barren, and they break down these barren rocks to form soil, right? So they need to have roots that can go deep into these rocks and break them apart. So that is the most important thing. All right, so that was the last question for today. Does anyone have any doubts? If no doubts, then we can, yeah, see you next week for the tutorial session for week 7. You didn't get any books? Yeah, I'm not sure as to how this works, you know. I did see something on the discussion forum where they have mentioned about, I don't know if they give any links. Did you post this on the discussion forum, Ranil? And what did they reply? Did they reply or did they not reply? Okay, they replied, and what did they say? It's in the dashboard. And it's not in the dashboard, is what you're saying? Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. So maybe, okay. So what you can do next is, I think, reply to that thread and say that you have checked the dashboard. Is it not there for everybody else, or is it only Rhino that does not have the books on the dashboard? Has anyone else checked this? Oh, I see. Okay, it's just class notes. Okay. So maybe, okay. So what you can do, Ranul, is you can just reply on their reply and say that you have checked the dashboard and all that you can find is a class note, and take a screenshot of what your panel says on the dashboard and tell them that there are no books here and if they can suggest or provide some books for reference. You can just reply to that same email or maybe just start a new email on the discussion forum. Yeah, sure. Try that and see if that works. Cool. Yeah. All right. Thanks everyone for coming today. All those who have attended. We seem to be having a huge dropout rate. I think we started with about maybe 80 students. But I'm glad that you all are interested in the topic and do enjoy ecology. All right. See you guys later next week.